1 week until Trump. Getting ready to deal with Trump's second term. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Deeper than the headlines.
The answers you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
January 20th, Inauguration Day, is 1 week from today, and then Donald Trump will start his second term as President of the United States. Trump has spent weeks now threatening to impose punishing tariffs on Canada, and he has also talked about using economic force to make Canada the 51st state. Some Canadian leaders have been trying to counter those threats by going on American cable news networks and making Canada's pitch. Ontario Premier Doug Ford has been on CNN and Fox News. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has been on Fox News, Fox Business News, and CNBC. And Prime Minister Trudeau was on CNN with Jake Tapper last week and recorded an interview with MSNBC's Jen Psaki that aired yesterday. Of course, the big news story in the United States these days is not really the Canada-U.S. relationship. It's the wildfires in California. Mr. Trudeau was sure to point out the help Canada is providing to fight those fires.
In regards to the fires, well, we went through some horrific fires over the past years as well, and American firefighters showed up for us, and we're glad to help out in any way. Unfortunately, we have now a developed level of expertise around wildfire interface with urban areas where we're there to help out with whether it's transport planes or Coast Guard cutters or water bombers or even firefighters. It's all there to help our friends in California.
On Canada becoming the 51st state, Mr. Trudeau repeated what he has always said. It's never going to happen.
Let's remember, I got to work with President Trump through his first 4 years in office, and we were able to renegotiate the most important trade deal either of us have, which is the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Deal, in a way that was beneficial to both our countries. And I know that as a successful negotiator, he likes to keep people a little off balance. The 51st state, that's not going to happen. It's just a non-starter. Canadians are incredibly proud of being Canadian, but people are now talking about that as opposed to talking about, for example, what the impact of 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum coming into the United States, on energy, whether it's oil and gas or electricity. I mean, no American wants to pay 25% more for electricity or oil and gas coming in from Canada. And that's something that I think people need to pay a little more attention to. And perhaps the idea of a 51st state is distracting a little bit from a very real question that will increase the cost of living for Americans and harm a trading relationship that works extremely well.
And that interview was recorded last week when Mr. Trudeau was in Washington to attend the funeral of former U.S. President Jimmy Carter. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith was in Florida over the weekend, met with Donald Trump at his estate. On social media, Smith posted several pictures of herself with Donald Trump, along with the Canadian investor Kevin O'Leary. According to one account, Smith had the chance to speak with Trump twice for about 10 minutes, once Saturday evening and again on Sunday. Premier had a news conference today. She's attending Trump's inauguration next week. For his part, Kevin O'Leary keeps talking about an economic union between Canada and the United States.
This is the longest border on Earth with the largest amount of trade, 1.3 trillion, 188 billion just out of Alberta, shipping energy to the United States, the number one exporter or importer of energy, between these two partnerships. So that's the trade deficit there. Trump talks about a $200 billion trade deficit. It's all oil that's being imported in the United States. In fact, Alberta has more oil than the entire United States and gas. And so that's a partnership that gives energy independence, number one. Number two, all the goods and services. I mean, Canadians and Americans are almost original DNA. They're almost the same with cultural differences, obviously, and nobody's saying give up your citizenship. But why wouldn't we create something as powerful as the economic union in Europe?
Back in Ottawa, the Trudeau Liberals are preparing a list of American goods they could target for retaliatory tariffs if Trump follows through on his threat to impose tariffs on Canadian exports. Melanie Joly told an interview, the federal government isn't ruling out restrictions on energy exports to the United States, including oil and gas from Alberta. But Premier Smith has said she's totally opposed to that. This was Premier Smith on CNBC just a few weeks ago.
I certainly don't think it is realistic, and nor do I think that that would make us a very good neighbor, quite frankly. I have a little bit of a difference of opinion with my Ontario counterpart, and maybe it's because we are the principal supplier of oil and gas to the United States. We know how vitally important it is for American energy dominance that we're able to be a partner in that. The Americans have, you've seen an increase of your production and export to 13 million barrels a day, but America still uses 20 million barrels a day. And so we're able to provide a lot for the domestic consumption, which keeps the price of gasoline low. We've been told that if a 25% tariff does indeed come in across the board, it would increase the price of gasoline by $1 a gallon, which I don't think that American consumers want. I don't think that would be in keeping with the second objective of the Trump administration, which is to address inflation and keep prices low. So we're hoping to be able to talk about how Canada is a great friend, great partner. We have a wonderful, quite balanced trade relationship compared to other nations in the world. And we think that if we took a North American strong approach so that we could get into a position of collective dominance, I think that that's actually a great partnership that should continue. And I hope that we can avoid tariffs altogether.
But there are those in Ottawa who want Canada to retaliate if Trump hits Canada with tariffs. Among them, the NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh. He posted this on social media yesterday.
I have a message for Donald Trump. Our country's not for sale. Not now, not ever. I lived across this country, and I can tell you, Canadians are a proud people. We're proud of our country, and we're ready to fight like hell to defend it. Right now, with the forest fires ravaging homes, Canadian firefighters showed up. That's who we are. We show up and support our neighbors. But if you think you can pick a fight with us, there'll be a price to pay. I've committed that if Donald Trump imposes tariffs on us, we should respond with retaliatory tariffs in kind. I think that anyone running as prime minister should do the same.
As for the Liberals' list of retaliatory tariffs, it is said to include American imports on things like orange juice, ceramics such as toilets and sinks, and some steel products. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
On News Radio.
It's only Monday, but there's a lot of political news to talk about already. There's the threat of tariffs from the incoming Trump administration, the NDP leader talking about that today. So is the Premier of Alberta. And there's the Liberal leadership race. We expect news on that file this week. Cormac MacSweeney is with us, the Parliamentary Bureau Chief for News Radio. Thanks for joining us again, Cormac.
Not a problem, Rob.
On retaliatory tariffs, the Liberals are said to be preparing a list should Trump follow through with his tariff threat. The NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is calling for retaliatory tariffs as well. What did he have to say today?
Yeah, we really got today two different visions of how Canada could respond. One is Jagmeet Singh, and we'll start with that, I guess. And then the other one is from Alberta's Premier, Danielle Smith. Now, when it comes to Singh, he is calling for retaliatory measures, which the federal government has already indicated it is prepared to do, it is willing to do, and will do if President Trump doesn't back down on his 25% tariff threat. The government has signaled that it's looking at things like orange juice, ceramics like toilets and sinks, American steel, and possibly even critical minerals. Singh wants to see that. He says the only way that you're going to deal with Donald Trump is through force. He says that's the only language that bullies, as he is describing the U.S. president, as a bully. He says the only thing they understand is force, and so Canada has to show that if he wants to take us on, there will be negative outcomes for the U.S. as well. And so he wants to see escalating tariffs. He doesn't want Canada to show its hand completely at the start. He wants to start smaller and then grow, but he does want to have an embargo on critical minerals. These are things that resources that you would need for things like, manufacturing cell phones or electric vehicle batteries. Canada has a lot of these critical minerals, and China is another big producer. But if the U.S. has already slapped massive tariffs on China, the only source for them, really convenient source, would be Canada, and that could send a clear message to the U.S. as well. And then he wants to escalate to include oil and gas. That's where Premier Danielle Smith has a problem with it. She doesn't think oil and gas, using energy sources and cutting those off from the U.S. is the right answer here. In fact, she's pitching a completely different idea than what we've heard from many premiers and federal politicians of all political stripes. She's suggesting that we answer to any U.S. tariffs by just addressing the potential trade discrepancies between our two countries, and that Canada just buy more American goods. And if we address the trade discrepancy, then we take the ammunition away from President Trump, and he will hypothetically get rid of the tariffs on Canada. So those are the two competing messages as the Prime Minister prepares to meet with premiers this week in Ottawa to discuss these tariffs and Canada's next steps. Premier Smith even warning of a national unity crisis if oil and gas is used, because she says Albertans won't go for it, and she doesn't, and that natural resources like oil and gas are the product of the province, not the federal government.
Yeah. Also, listening to her news conference today, I will point out she seemed to sound as though these Trump tariffs are inevitable, that she fully expects Trump to impose tariffs soon after taking office, again, to be sworn in 1 week from today. So, the Liberal leadership, Cormac, let's start with who is out, who's not running to be the next Liberal leader.
Yeah, the list of who's not running seems to be now getting longer than the list of who is running. But we did have over the weekend some ministers decide to announce that they are not going to be running. So Minister Anita Anand, the transport minister, who has long been rumored to be potentially eyeing that top job, has decided that she will not be running for the leadership. And not only that, she will not be running in the next federal election. So she is leaving politics. And that's a decision that she's come to after keeping her name in the mix for a little while. We've also heard that Steve McKinnon, Labour minister, who had been thinking about it as well, has decided that he will not be running again. So you can add those names to the likes of Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly, who have all decided to take a pass this time around. We are waiting to hear from Minister Francois-Philippe Champagne. He's at Innovation. He deals with industry. He is looking at his options, and I've been able to confirm that he will be making his decision public tomorrow. And the Globe and Mail reports that decision will be a big no. And that's going to be involved in a conversation about the U.S. tariff threat and challenges with the U.S. And our economy moving forward at a Canadian Club event in Toronto. And so like Melanie Joly and like Dominic LeBlanc, if his decision is no, I expect to hear a lot of the same language, that the tariff threat to Canada is more important than any personal ambitions, and that's why he's deciding to take a pass this time around. But we'll wait for Minister Champagne to make his announcement tomorrow. And now it all comes down to just a handful of others who might be willing to join the race. You've got former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney, who is expected to announce his official leadership bid this week. We still haven't heard of timing for an announcement from Minister Chrystia Freeland. There have been reports that she has been tapping some Toronto Liberals to join her team, but no official decision has been announced yet from her team, or even an indication of when we might get that official decision. Another player who's involved in this is House Leader Karina Gould, somebody who often deals with caucus members. Her name has started floating and wasn't one of those names that we were talking about in the lead up to the resignation of the Prime Minister, but ever since then, it has been floated quite a bit. She's considering her options, as well as Natural Resources Minister Jonathan Wilkinson, who's from BC, and of course, BC Premier Christy Clark could be joining the race as well. So it might end up being, in terms of the big names, it could just be Clark, Carney, and Chrystia Freeland who end up running.
Okay. Thank you for the update today, Cormac MacSweeney. Great to hear from you.
Anytime.
The Parliamentary Bureau Chief for News Radio. That's Cormac MacSweeney. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
on News Radio.
To retaliate or not to tariffs from Donald Trump, who will be sworn in as U.S. president 1 week from today. Two Canadian leaders have two different opinions on the matter. The federal NDP leader Jagmeet Singh had an event for the news media in Ottawa today, and he is proposing retaliatory tariffs on American imports into this country. And he says we should start with critical minerals because you just can't talk with Donald Trump.
What's become clear is that meeting with Donald Trump does nothing. Ask Danielle Smith. She met with him, she tried to wine and dine him, and she came back and said, yep, there's definitely tariffs coming. So clearly that approach is not working. That approach is clearly failed with Donald Trump. That Donald Trump only understands one thing, and that is force. We have to show that if he's going to pick a fight with Canada, it's going to hurt Americans as well. That is the only thing that he understands.
But this has been like one.
Should she be turning the taps off on oil exports? Where are you on turning off the taps or restricting oil exports to the United States?
When I was in law school, I learned that when you're in a fight or when you're in a legal battle, you don't pull out all your tools right at once. You escalate step by step. So that is a tool that should be on the table, but not something we start with. I'm proposing we start with critical minerals, but we need to look at every option. Every response to the tariffs that could hurt Canadians in a serious way should be met with tariffs in kind, and all solutions that we can propose should be on the table, and that's absolutely one of them.
Now, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith was at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend. Had a chance to speak with Donald Trump. She was asked today during her own media event about this idea of cutting off energy exports to the United States, as suggested by the Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly. Smith said she couldn't support something like that and warned about what that could mean for Ontario and Quebec.
Yesterday, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly talked about, she was asked specifically if in negotiations with Trump, Canada would consider an energy embargo on the United States. And I want to, as leverage, what do you think, what do you make of what she said?
Well, first of all, it's oil and gas is owned by the provinces, principally Alberta, and we won't stand for that. And you should never, ever threaten something you cannot do. And I would encourage the minister to look at a map of where Line 5 goes. Line 5 comes down through Michigan to get to Sarnia. And then that feeds the bulk of the supply needed for Ontario and connects with Line 9, which feeds the bulk of the product needed for Quebec. And so if you cut off that line, you are cutting off Ontario and Quebec. So I would encourage the ministers to either understand how our integrated pipeline system works and start looking at ways that we would be able to practically respond, because there's no point in making empty threats that cannot be executed on.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith today. More on this ahead. We'll also talk about this during Talkback today. In the second hour of our program, our Newsday panel is coming up. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio. The Newsday panel.
Yes, it is time for our Newsday panel. There's so much to talk about today. Ariella Kimmel is Vice President at Winston Wilmot. Thanks for joining us, Ariella. Great to hear from you.
Thanks for having me on.
And Ashton Arsenal is partner at Crestview Strategy. Hi, Ashton. Good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you, Rob.
So, Ariella, what do you think about what is known so far about who is in and who is out of the Liberal leadership race?
I mean, officially, you only have two MPs who anyone who I've ever spoken to who's outside of politics has said, who is that? So it's kind of hard to take it very seriously right now. We obviously know we're likely to get Freeland and Carney and Clark in this week, so would make it a bit more of a race, but it seems to be a lot of the same.
Okay, what do you think, Ashton?
Yeah, up to this point, there really hasn't been as much buzz around the leadership contest as I would have expected. I mean, we've spent months speculating on who might step into the ring, and they all seem to be dropping like flies. I don't blame them. They know at best, they'd be signing up for years in opposition. And so I absolutely agree with Ariella. The two declared candidates to date are absolute jokers. Christy Clark is a proven winner, but she can't seem to get her facts straight. And by all accounts, her French is absolutely abysmal. And I just have a really hard time believing that an Anglophone from British Columbia can prevail in a Liberal leadership race. I think it's next to impossible. So, yeah, look, we're all waiting to see the top dogs get into this race. I think it's reasonable to conclude that those top dogs are Freeland and Carney, and I'd be a little bit surprised if by the end of the week we didn't have those two in the race.
And do you think, Ashton, and then I'll get an answer from Ariella, the $350,000 entry fee has something to do with this, as well as the outlook being so bleak right now for the Liberal Party?
Yeah, I think so. Like, we do have all the rules. In terms of the entry fee, $350,000 is pretty steep, right? We're talking about a leadership that's going to be about 45 days. And to be able to clear that hurdle, I think at this point you've got to have some very serious name recognition to sort of attract that pool of donors to make this at all viable. And so I think that is probably a part of the trepidation. Like, I have a very difficult time believing the two declared candidates would be able to cross that threshold. But then again, I'm perhaps not as plugged into the Liberal Party of Canada machine as others.
Nor am I.
Some might disagree with me, Rob, but yeah, that's a big hurdle to climb.
The $350,000 entry fee, what role do you think that has played in kind of narrowing the field, Ariel?
Well, I'm also not plugged in, as Ashton is, but I definitely think it's playing a role. It is such a tight turnaround time. I do think more playing the bigger role is the abysmal, chances that they have. And as Ashton said, at best they'll sit in opposition for years to come. And most of these people don't want that, and are seeing that there's a possibility that after this leadership will very quickly be a next one that may lead to, a longer runway and more opportunity. The two that are there right now, no, I definitely don't think can reach that threshold. But you're already hearing rumblings about how unhappy people are with the rules, the tight turnaround, the money, and everything to go with it. And so, is there even a chance now that the party changes the rules again and just continues to appease people and make it easier for people to enter?
So Melanie Joly, the foreign minister, is not going to run for the Liberal Party leadership. And according to at least one news report, Francois-Philippe Champagne will announce tomorrow that he's not running either. And he will point to the threat of tariffs from U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, who will be sworn in again a week from today, meaning really no high-profile candidate for the Liberals from Quebec, a crucial battleground for the Liberal Party now more than at any time in decades, really, because of the rising Bloc Québécois. What do you think about that, Ashton?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think it speaks to the gigantic problem the Liberal Party of Canada is facing. Like, all of these folks, save maybe Christy Clark, have a gigantic problem that nobody seems to want to address directly, and that's the stench of Justin Trudeau and the reality that they were more than complicit in how he ran the country for the past 9 years. That's not something that can be easily explained. And again, going back to the prize, what's the prize? Well, at best, the prize is to be prime minister for a few weeks. and then probably steering your party into an electoral beatdown that is going to last for many years. So I'm not surprised that, some of the bigger brand names are dropping out. I do still think we'll ultimately have sort of the big brand names of Carney and Freeland, but try convincing Canadians that they are not a representative of Justin Trudeau. It's ridiculous. They've got a big, big hurdle to clear, and from my vantage point, I don't see how it's possible right now.
Ariella, do you agree with that?
Well, if you listen to Chandra Arya, that the Quebecois are just Anglophone Canadians, so it doesn't seem to be a problem. But it is shocking, and it does speak to the Liberal brand and what's happened to it. My mom grew up in Montreal, in Côte St. Luc, and was just a Liberal by natural trade. Like, she couldn't really, I think, tell you necessarily why she was a Liberal, but it was just ingrained in them, and that was the natural party for a lot of people in Quebec. Their brand has just been so tarnished, and as Ashton has said repeatedly, like, we just didn't have they don't have the chance, and so why would anyone with a serious, hope want to take the party on now?
Okay. We're just getting started. It's our Newsday panel. When we come back, we will talk a little bit more about Christy Clark with a stumble out of the gate. Not telling the truth, quite likely, on never being a member of the Conservative Party. So we'll talk about that. Can she recover from that? What kind of chance does she have in this race? And how has the Conservative Party's election strategy been changed because of Mr. Trudeau's decision to resign? How will the Conservative campaign need to adjust, running against someone else? I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel. Ariella Kimmel is vice president at Winston Wilmot, and Ashton Arsenault is partner at Crestview Strategy. Christy Clark. Let's talk about Christy Clark, the former BC premier, who has some explaining to do, I suppose. She is considering a run for the federal leadership, and she denied that she was ever a member of the Conservative Party, despite comments that she was supporting Jean Charest in the Conservative leadership race back in 2022. I don't think that was any secret. She says she just didn't want Poilievre to become the Conservative leader. But a spokesperson for the Conservative Party refuted her claim, saying they have records of Clark's membership from the 2022 leadership race. So Christy Clark says, well, I misspoke. Can she recover from this stumble out of the gate? What do you think, Ariella?
I think when she tweeted, she misspoke. It was an attempt to kind of be like folksy and, oops, it happens. But I do think what helps her is it did happen at a point when you would say, unless you're political like us, you're not really paying attention, and everything can change so fast in politics. So I do think she can recover, but she does need to learn to own it. Like, she's someone who's been tied to the Conservative movement, whether through the party membership, supporting Charest, or being, at events or speaking at conferences with groups affiliated with the movement. So while her message to the Liberals is going to be that we have to be, to be here, we have to change, then she has to move and own what her past.
Sure. Okay. All right. What do you think, Ashton?
Yeah. Christy Clark is a proven campaigner. She's a proven winner. And I think the one big advantage that she has is that she doesn't carry around the stench of the existing government and the prime minister. So that's a big differentiator that I think her main competition is not going to be able to benefit from. I think I said it at the top. I think she's got a bigger problem, and that's the inability to speak French. I gather she'd been taking some lessons and continues to do so, but apparently it is abysmal. And so how that holds up over the rigor of a leadership race, I don't know. I haven't actually even seen her attempt to speak French, but look, it's a bit of a difficult path forward, I think, for Christy Clark. But like, if she does have one thing going for her, it's that she is different in this race, and that's a bit of a value add.
Yeah. So Christy Clark, her advantage.
The hubris the hubris of not knowing that political parties keep databases and, she would be able to get fact-checked on whether or not she was a member in a matter of 5 seconds is a little bit bizarre to me. But anyways, I think it's in the past.
Okay. So her advantage, no stench. Disadvantage, no French. You see what I did there. Okay. All right. How has a Conservative Party election strategy been changed because of Mr. Trudeau's decision to resign? How will the Conservative campaign need to adjust now? Ariella, what would you say?
I think for now, if I'm honest, their strategy shouldn't be drastically changing. Pierre needs to continue to be out there, showing himself as a leader, speaking to Canadians, especially in this time when there is really a vacuum of leadership to be filled, that right now we're really seeing our premiers fill. There is the opportunity for him to continue to be out there and speak strongly, and that's what he should be doing. And let the Liberal Party internally destroy themselves and have an internal fight.
Okay. Ashton?
Yeah, I'll take it even a step further. The Conservative election strategy has not changed, and it's not going to change. It won't change because, in reality, nothing has changed. We still have a Liberal government. We still have a carbon tax. Affordability challenges are still out of control, and Canadians still can't afford housing. So, no, nothing's going to change. Poilievre did a press conference last week where he essentially laid out his thinking, and I thought it was pretty brilliant on his part. He said that whether the next leader of the Liberal Party likes it or not, he is running against Justin Trudeau in the next election. He can change the face and the name, but it's Justin Trudeau, and I think he's got a point. The Liberals, I think, are likely either to go with somebody who literally was the architect of years of bad fiscal policy and runaway deficits, or somebody who is so invested in the carbon tax, I could look up liberal elitist in the dictionary and see a picture of his face. They are both cooked, and they are both direct representatives of Justin Trudeau. So leopards can't change their spots. Sorry, Christy Clark. And Trudeau Liberals can't change either. Strategy is going to be the same.
All right, we'll talk a little bit more about the coming election, whether the ballot question is going to be axe the tax, whether it's going to be change, whether it's going to change entirely and maybe it's already changed. And the ballot question is not what the Conservatives want it to be, but it's rather who can best deal with Donald Trump. We'll talk about that when we come back. I'm Rob Snow. It's our Newsday panel here on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
It's our Newsday panel. Ashton Arsenault is here, partner at Crestview Strategy. Ariella Kimmel, vice president at Winston Wilmot. There is this growing narrative now that however much Pierre Poilievre wants to run an axe the tax election, wants the carbon tax to be the ballot question in the next election, that's not going to be the ballot question, and that events have changed. And now the ballot question in the next election is who can best deal with Donald Trump. Ariella, what do you think the ballot question is going to be in the next election? What would you say?
I still think it's going to be change. I think change represents everything, right? Affordability, the direction of this country, public safety, all the issues people are dealing with on a daily basis. Like that's what people generally care about. And I do think the Donald Trump factor will obviously play in, but I do think change is what people are looking at and what people are desiring more than anything right now.
Yeah, I think I would also add, Ariella, just because the ballot question changes, you don't think it really is going to change all that much. But if it is who best can deal with Donald Trump, that doesn't necessarily swing in any way, some way to advantage Liberal, I don't think, because the public opinion polling would seem to suggest that most Canadians think Pierre Poilievre would be best to deal with Donald Trump. Yes?
I mean, look at right now, like who's best dealing with Donald Trump is our premiers, and mostly our conservative premiers are the ones who are out there and doing something. So I don't necessarily think, I agree with you. I don't think that even if the ballot question is who can best deal with Donald Trump, this is going to favor the Liberals. They seem to just be behind this issue consistently, and we're about a week away from inauguration, and Canadians are feeling uneasy, and the ones you see stepping up are Doug Ford, Danielle Smith. They're the ones who are seemingly trying to build the relationship and play the Donald Trump game, understanding who they're dealing with.
Okay. What do you think the ballot question is going to be in the next election, Ashton?
Yeah, I agree with what was said. I think it's ultimately going to be change. And yes, we can use the vernacular of carbon tax election, but I actually extrapolate that out to change, right? It is policies and decisions that are very much different than what we're currently experiencing in Canada. And I have a really hard time believing that Canadians are going to be laser focused on who is best to deal with Donald Trump when there are so many domestic issues happening at home. I absolutely don't think that's going to be the ballot box question. I'm sure some Canadians will think about it, but let's remember where we are, okay? We have a lame duck prime minister and a president of the United States that exploits weaknesses and has been transparent about his disdain for the current prime minister. Either ballot box question we've discussed, Liberals lose.
Yeah. Okay. And finally, do you think Singh is serious this time when he says the NDP really plans to defeat the government at the earliest opportunity, or do you see a scenario where this minority government could maybe last a little bit longer than some people think? What do you think, Ariella?
So I never take things seriously, but I don't think they're going to defeat the government at the earliest opportunity. I do think that this is going to last a little longer. I know there are some who are saying we will see a spring election, but Jagmeet has a 3% chance of winning his own seat in this coming election. You know, he's going to completely lose his pulpit, and he'll also likely, be removed as leader. So I don't see him bringing down this government anytime soon.
Oh, interesting. Okay. In 30 seconds or less, Ashton, what do you think?
Yeah, he's really approaching boy who cried wolf territory. And, the problem with Mr. Singh is that he's been given every opportunity to make the right decision going back several months, and he's failed to do so every single time. So, like Ariella, I have a very, very difficult time taking Mr. Singh at his word, and who's to say the next Liberal leader won't find a way to cut a deal with him behind closed doors. But even still, I think Mr. Singh actually has a much bigger problem. I'll make a prediction. I think this will be his last election as the leader of the NDP.
Yeah, I think that's a safe prediction. That's our time. Thanks to both of you. Great conversation today. Thanks, much happening. Bye-bye. Yep. Ariella Kimmel is Vice President at Winston Wilmot, and Ashton Arsenault is partner at Crestview Strategy. Talkback is coming up. Donald Trump. 1 week from now, Donald Trump will be sworn in as U.S. President today. We'll talk about dealing with Trump. Get your opinions. Tariffs and trade. An economic union. Your calls after the news on Talkback on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today's topic, dealing with Trump. And all the ideas that are out there with 1 week to go until Inauguration Day in the United States and Donald Trump becoming president of the United States again. Yeah, 1 week from today, January 20th. 1 week from today. And you know the threat or threats that have been made. And across the board, 25% tariff or economic force to make Canada the 51st state. Let's say Donald Trump is true to his word. And one of the first things he does as president of the United States is impose those tariffs on Canada and our exports to the United States. How should Canada respond? Should Canada respond with retaliatory tariffs, counter tariffs? We know based on news reporting that it's being considered, that the Liberals in Ottawa are coming up with a list. If Donald Trump imposes tariffs on Canadian exports, Canada might impose tariffs on American imports. And the Liberals are coming up with a list. Melanie Joly, the Foreign Affairs Minister, told a Weekend Talk Show Restricting energy exports to the United States hasn't been ruled out, although Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is totally against it. But that is something that Ontario Premier Doug Ford has also talked about, restricting supplies of electricity from Ontario to various U.S. states. But the federal government is thinking about retaliatory tariffs, and the NDP leader in Ottawa today, Jagmeet Singh, said he's pushing for counter tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, saying it's the only way to stand up to a bully. You have to hit back. You have to make the bully feel some pain. So that is question number one for today. Do you support or oppose the idea of retaliatory tariffs if Donald Trump imposes a 25% tariff on all Canadian exports to the United States? Should Canada impose tariffs of its own? What would you say? Would you support or oppose that idea? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Phone lines are open now. Here is another angle to this whole story that we'd like to get your take on today. What do you think of this idea of an economic union between Canada and the United States? An economic union. We know that along with Danielle Smith, Kevin O'Leary met with Donald Trump at Trump's estate in Florida. Both O'Leary and Smith posted pictures on social media over the weekend of themselves with Donald Trump. What do you think of this idea? This is what Kevin O'Leary is promoting. And I would imagine this is what he's probably pitched to Donald Trump. So I want to run it by you and find out whether you think this is a good idea or not. We start using the US dollar. He says we have to have a common currency. And I think he's talking about the US dollar. Common currency. All the business we do, it's denominated in US dollars anyway, he says. We have a common passport that would allow free travel for any American or Canadian to work or study in both countries. And he says we're all still Canadian citizens, or Americans are still Americans. Nobody gives up citizenship, but O'Leary thinks it would be good if we had a common passport. And he says no tariffs. No tariffs on American exports to the United States. No tariffs on American imports into Canada. And we get rid of all the crazy interprovincial tariffs that we have in Canada. An economic union. He says, like the European Union. O'Leary thinks it would be great for the Canadian economy and it would be great for the U.S. economy. Do you think it would be great? Is that a great idea? Or is it a bad idea? Or so-so? He's the one meeting with Trump, okay, not us. And I guess this is the case he's trying to make. I'd love to know what you think about it. Would you support or oppose an economic union with the United States? Yes or no? Why or why not? Call in line 1-833-668-2577. If you're a first-time caller, just mention that to our call screener. We will make your call a priority. And again, our two main questions are, support or oppose retaliatory tariffs on American imports into Canada if Donald Trump slaps tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States? Yes, no, why not? And would you support or oppose economic union with the United States? Same currency, same passport. No tariffs north, south, east, west. Get rid of all tariffs, including barriers that currently exist in the country between the Canadian provinces. Nobody loses their citizenship. Everybody's citizenship stays the same. What do you think of that idea? You support something like that? Or would you be against something like that? 1-833-668-2577. Welcome back to Talkback on a Monday with so much to talk about today. I'm Rob Snow. Your call's coming up. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Donald Trump will be sworn in as U.S. president 1 week from today. He has threatened to impose a 25% tariff on all Canadian exports to the United States. If he does that, should Canada impose its own tariffs on American imports? Yes or no? Why not? And would you support or oppose Canada entering into an economic union with the United States that would include things like a common currency, a common passport, allowing free travel between the two countries, and no tariffs at all? Nobody loses citizenship. Your thoughts on that as well. Dave in Halifax is up first today. What's your opinion, Dave?
Well, firstly, I think we're getting a little excited here. We have to tread very carefully when it comes to retaliating against the United States. They do have the power. It's not going to be my decision in the end, Rob. It's going to be Poilievre, I would think. And I'm hoping Trump will wait till he gets in. It's not far away. And let's face it, he's going to get in. Hands down, there's going to be another conservative leader here, along with Trump down south. I think, firstly, the reason we're seeing a big swing to the right is because people are fed up with the alternative, which is the left-leaning governments. They've made a mess of things. The Democrats, they're going to have to battle back hard to even have a chance next election, I would think. So he ran on tariffs, Trump. That we know that, right? He ran on tariffs.
Yes, he did.
To save tax money on Americans to a certain degree. This is what his theory is. And he ran on economy. He ran on illegal immigration, I think, and crime. I think we all feel the same thing here to a certain degree, right? We feel these pressing matters here, and it's forced our hand to. There's diehard liberals and conservatives and maybe NDP as well, but we want change. I think you spoke to the last two people you spoke to, really good spokespersons, by the way, and they said it nailed the nail on the head with people want.
But the mood has changed. The mood has
change.
changed. Yeah, that the mood has changed.
The mood is, that. You could talk to people. You hear it in their voices,
Right.
And I think we better tread very carefully where we go with this. I hope when Poilievre does get in, and he will get in, I think we can all admit, I don't think the Liberals have any chance whatsoever. I think we're going to see maybe a little bit of neutrality there, I think. And as far as forming a union-type economy, look at our dollar. We're $1.50, I think, right now. We're basically 50 cents to the U.S. dollar. We're paying twice as much for a liter of fuel than they are. Is that enough to say, hey, you know what, maybe we can bend things? I think we could become a little more comfortable with the U.S. I mean, China's moving all around the world, right? They're moving into countries, and if we don't, the U.S.
So, what do you think of this idea of economic union that O'Leary is pitching?
I think we could do that. Yeah, I think we could possibly do that. But again, it's not my decision. Why not?
Sure.
Why not? I mean, our economies on both sides are failing right now, or need a boost of something. And maybe that might be the answer, Rob. I don't know. It's not my decision.
Got to wrap it up there, Dave.
Okay.
Yeah, jam-packed phone lines on this topic today, so I'm going to move along. I thank you for your opinion. To Kitchener, Jay is in Kitchener. What's your opinion, Jay?
Well, I'm just thinking that because of what happened late last week, if we have to send fire supplies and a lot more things that Mr. Trump's going to have to rely on long term, we have to learn how to work together. Because there was a lot of people who suffered last week, and long term we're going to have to learn how to cooperate. I know it's not really a topic you're talking about today, but it just it's a very stressful time right now.
Okay.
And I'm hoping for the best, and I'm hoping that we can kind of work, because Canada would send whatever supplies we needed to. I apologize if I'm going too far off your topic for today.
No, that's okay. That's okay. But let's listen today. I mean, this is one political leader in Canada. He's the leader of the NDP. Jagmeet Singh had an event in Ottawa today for the news media, and he is proposing retaliatory tariffs. We know the Liberals are coming up with their own list. And Mr. Singh, we have some audio of this, says we should start with critical minerals. Roll the tape there, David.
What's become clear is that meeting with Donald Trump does nothing. Ask Danielle Smith. She met with him. She tried to wine and dine him, and she came back and said, yep, there's definitely tariffs coming. So clearly that approach is not working. That approach is clearly failed with Donald Trump. That Donald Trump only understands one thing, and that is force. We have to show that if he's going to pick a fight with Canada, it's going to hurt Americans as well. That is the only thing that he understands.
But this has been like one. Should she be turning the taps off on oil exports? Where are you on turning off the taps or restricting oil exports to the United States?
When I was in law school, I learned that when you're in a fight or when you're in a legal battle, you don't put out all your tools right at once. You escalate step by step. So that is a tool that should be on the table, but not something we start with. I'm proposing we start with critical minerals, but we need to look at every option. Every response to the tariffs that could hurt Canadians in a serious way should be met with tariffs in kind, and all solutions that we can propose should be on the table, and that's absolutely one of them.
Okay, so that was Mr. Singh today in Ottawa. Michael in Cape Breton, what do you think about retaliatory tariffs and joining an economic union with the United States? Michael.
Economic control leads to political control, so no to control. I don't listen to anything Kevin O'Leary says after him referring to people as cockroaches. So leave him out of the mess. Kevin's only in it for his own best interest. Okay. On the other end, if the United States levies tariffs on Canada, do exactly what Mr. Singh said. Hit them tariff for tariff and do it strategically so that we're not the only ones that suffer. The American people will end up feeling the pain, and they'll take care of Mr. Trump for bringing unnecessary pain on them. So the way I look at it is, I'll stick, and Thea Ross, too, even agreed. She said, it's pretty hard to deny Mr. Singh at all. He's so honest. Did anybody get that? He's so honest. Time for people to wake up, Rob. Wake up and smell the roses before it's too late.
Okay.
Economic control leads to political control.
All right, Michael. Thank you. Got to run. We're just getting started. It's time to talk Trump again today. Trump and tariffs and trade. What if Trump follows through on his tariff threat? He becomes president 1 week from today. Should Canada retaliate with tariffs of its own? What do you think of this idea being pitched by Kevin O'Leary? Economic union with the United States. Ditch the loonie. Adopt the Canadian dollar. You don't have to give up your citizenship, but you would enjoy free travel between the two countries. You ever want to work in the United States or maybe study at Stanford or Harvard? This would make it easier, he says. And just get rid of all the tariffs. Would you support or oppose something like that? It's Talkback on News Radio.
Something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
What should Canada do if Trump follows through on its tariff threat? Should it impose its own tariffs on American imports to Canada? What do you think of the idea of an economic union between Canada and the United States? Things like a common currency, a common passport. What do you think about that? It's being pitched. Tim in Halifax. Tim, hi there. What's your opinion?
Well, I'm going to lead off by saying never forget we're in this position because of the Liberals, NDP, and the Bloc. Parliament's on standby right now, and a lot of the stuff could have been addressed if things had a handout differently. As far as the tariffs go, it is what it is. Like, I don't really have control over that. I think, match, for what they're doing. And as far as becoming like a big a marrow or whatever, I mean, I would have to see more data on that, what that's actually going to look at. And I got to go really quick, but I'm going to leave it with this one last thought. We're in danger of actually probably having a referendum. Like, what if Alberta decides they're going to leave and join the States? With all this division that's been sown over the past few years, and with the country and the state it is, and people feeling disconnected, like, I don't think people realize that is a real danger. Quebec almost did it.
Oh, Quebec is planning on trying again, sir. Quebec is planning on trying again, maybe as soon as 2026. Yeah. It's a good point. Good point, sir. Okay, thank you. You want to know more about this idea of an economic union? Fair enough. We'll tell you what what we know as we make our way through the day, because lots of material to work with, courtesy of Kevin O'Leary. William is in Calgary. Hi, William. You're on the air. What's your opinion, please?
Hi, thanks, Rob, for letting me talk. Basically, Trump likes to say things which is probably in his own world. Basically, when you look at China, when we in the situation that we want to impose tariff on the EV parts on China.
Yes.
And then what the China responds back to Canada the same thing. So I think the Canadian in every province needs to work together and prep on this thing, just in case that Trump really impose tariff on Canada. So we need to retaliate the same way like China did to us. So we cannot let Trump do whatever he wants, because he is what he is. So
you would support retaliatory tariffs? Yes.
Yeah.
Economic union.
Look at what is in right now, LA wildfire. So after the wildfire, what do? They need to buy lumber from Canada. So in the same situation that, Trump needs to look at who he's talking to. We are the world's biggest lumber export.
Okay, I'm not sure if we're the world's biggest lumber exporter. I'm sure we're pretty high up on that list, and I think your phone has just dropped out. So I believe we'll end our conversation there, William, but I thank you for your call. It's Talkback. We're talking about Trump being sworn in as U.S. president 1 week from today. What if he follows through with that tariff threat? Should Canada impose tariffs of its own on American goods coming to Canada? What do you think of this idea? Economic union with the United States. Flush that out a little bit more. 1-833-668-2577. We're back right after the latest breaking news on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Donald Trump will be sworn in as U.S. president 1 week from today. He has threatened a 25% tariff on Canada's exports to the United States. If he does that, should Canada impose its own tariffs on American imports to Canada? Yes, no, why not? And would you support or oppose Canada entering into an economic union with the United States? That's something Kevin O'Leary is pitching. I'd like to gauge your support or opposition to that at 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. The Alberta Premier, Danielle Smith, was at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend, met with Donald Trump, spoke to him twice, apparently. She had a media availability today for news reporters. She was asked about this idea of an export tax, for example, on oil and gas exports from Alberta. And she said that she wants to avoid retaliatory tariffs. This is Premier Smith today.
There's going to have to be some kind if a 25% tariff comes in across the board on all of our goods, there will have to be a Canadian response. My efforts are to try to avoid that altogether. I feel like it would be mutually damaging to have 25% tariffs across the board on U.S. goods coming into Canada. That would harm Canadian citizens at a time when we have an affordability crisis, in the same way that a 25% tariff across the board on our goods to the U.S. will harm U.S. citizens, some more than others. There are some states whose refineries, we've got 50 refineries that rely on Canadian oil. Those states are going to suffer the biggest increase in gasoline prices. So, which is also an objective of the administration, is to keep energy costs low. So I hope cooler heads prevail. I hope we're able to make the case that taking out energy, Canada actually has the trade deficit. We're a good partner. We buy a lot of goods from the United States, more than any other jurisdiction, and we should maintain this tariff-free relationship for the benefit of both of us. That's what I hope is the outcome. But and that's what I'll keep continuing to argue until we see what actually happens on January the 20th.
All right, let's gather some calls here. 1-833-668-2577. Tom in Cambridge, you're on the air. What's your opinion today, Tom?
Well, and to me, from Daniel Smith's standpoint, it's a political tap dance. Like, well, I'm really trying to formulate what are my thoughts here, but if we do not do anything, we're going to pay the price. If we do something, we're going to pay the price. But if you're going to be united, let's be united here. And if it's going to require putting tariffs on energy, and if it's going to hurt us and hurt them, who's going to flinch first? If there's 50 refineries in the United States that rely on Canadian crude oil being pumped down them for their jobs down there, I'm pretty sure that's going to impact a few of the states down there. And if we're going to put tariffs on, which ones do we want to really put the tariffs on, and what's the range here? So from that standpoint, I think we should respond to that. As far as an economic reliance is, Kevin O'Leary is like, Kevin's in it for money. Like, who's it going to benefit when we go into an economic alliance with the United States? Does that mean that we're going to pay less for a pair of Levi jeans that we pay for now? Because if you go to the States, their product is much cheaper than here. We pay more for stuff imported from the States. We don't pay less for it. So I don't know how an economic alliance is going to benefit the average Canadian. The American wages, which comes back to, again, a lot of minimum wages in certain states down there, is $7.25. What's it going to cost the Canadian citizens here if we went to?
Okay. Good point.
From that standpoint.
All right. Good point. Thank you, Tom. To Peter in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Peter, you're on the air. Peter, what's your opinion here?
Hi, Rob. Thanks for taking my
Peter.
call. Henry Kissinger, very, very influential and knowledgeable Secretary of State, once said, the Americans don't have permanent friends. Americans don't have permanent enemies. Americans have permanent interests.
Right.
And I am sure that Saddam Hussein and his cabinet were discussing how to deal with the Americans, too.
Until cooperating with the Americans wasn't in America's interest anymore. In other words, right?
Exactly, because at one time they were allies, right? America put Saddam Hussein in power, and put Assad in power, and America has no permanent friends; they have permanent interests. And another thing about Donald Trump is, because I listen to a lot of American podcasts, both sides,
Sure,
but anyway,
sure.
is he has, and that's what Greenland is about also. He has disdain for royalty. Remember, we have a governor, right? We have a governor. This isn't going to do with Canada so much as it's going to do with Britain. So we can talk about it all we want, and we can have Baghdad Jagmeet blather away, but they're going to do whatever they want.
Right. The question is, if they do a 25% tariff on all of our exports to the United States, should we retaliate?
But our dollars, it still won't come up to par because our dollar is down 45 cents. So what difference does it make?
Okay.
It's not about the tariffs. It's about the monarchy.
Yeah, I don't know if it has really anything to do with the monarchy.
Why is all that wealth up north going away over to England, who we have to protect?
Okay, I'm not sure what you're talking about, Peter. You totally lost me on this. Okay, thank you, Peter. The dollar, by the way, since people keep bringing up our dollar, 69.37 cents U.S. It is basically unchanged on the day, maybe up a little bit, but not by much. 69.38 U.S. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback on a Monday. We're starting the week on a high note, I guess you could say, because we're just 1 week removed from the inauguration of U.S. President Donald Trump, and who knows, maybe soon after, tariffs. What should we do? Let's talk about it when we come back. With your help, 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
If Donald Trump follows through with his tariff threat, should Canada retaliate with tariffs of its own? And what do you think of this idea? Economic union with the United States, common currency, common passport. What do you think of that idea? Vivian in Calgary, you're on the air. Vivian, what's your opinion?
Oh, hi, Rob. Thanks for taking the call.
You're welcome.
My first thought about the tariffs is that, first of all, I don't know that Mr. Trump really understands how the tariffs work, that it's almost like he thinks of it as a tax, that we would pay the tax and that they would have to raise their prices to accommodate the tariff. And it seems that if we retaliate with the same thing, they'll effectively cancel each other out. I don't know. I don't really agree with very much that Danielle Smith says. In fact, nothing. But I did agree with her on that one point, that I don't really think that would accomplish what they think it would. I don't know.
Danielle Smith said it would hurt people on both sides of the border. That's what she said. It would hurt everybody.
Yes, I agree. I think it would be equal. Like I said, the tariffs cancel each other out in that we both do the same thing. We're both paying the extra money. As far as the economic union with the United States, oh my goodness, I totally do not agree with that. That to me is just one big slippery slope right down to being American. There isn't much.
Really?
Well, I think so. I mean, if we're going to use their money and have a common passport and travel back and forth as if there are no boundaries, everything's the same. Other than, I assume, I don't know
we
whether...
keep our citizenship, he said.
Yeah, well, okay, I guess we vote in Canada, they vote in the United States. I don't know. I don't know quite all the details. I just heard about that this morning, actually, when I was listening to your show earlier, I don't know. But
okay, well, let's listen. Let's listen. Kevin O'Leary is the guy pitching this. He was with Danielle Smith at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend and then posted this video to social media. Won't play the whole thing, but he gives you the gist of it. Kevin O'Leary, David, let's roll the tape on that.
A common currency. All of the commodities, and Canada's so rich in them, whether it's precious metals, or water, or oil, or whatever, gas, are denominated in American dollars. Every Canadian has an American dollar account. So why not just say, we'll have a common currency. Maybe you give the Bank of Canada 2 seats on the Fed, details to be worked out. And all of a sudden, you're trading goods and services in one currency. Check that box. Number 2, eradicate all tariffs, not just north and south, east and west. You take Vermont, for example. There's a barrier between Vermont farmers selling dairy into Quebec, just north of them. And Quebec is subsidized by Alberta with a milk board that pours milk away after Alberta gives them $5 billion to subsidize them. That's just sheer stupidity. Wine in California can't be shipped to British Columbia. British Columbia wine can't be shipped to Ontario. You get to see what I'm talking about. Eradicate all of that, and the productivity goes through the moon. Here's how you control immigration. Let's nickname it the Uni. This is a passport that's issued to any American citizen in good standing with the American government and has a passport, or any Canadian citizen in good standing with the Canadian government. Each government gets a say on whether a unifying passport is issued to that individual. That individual can then travel and live anywhere they want, any province, any state, and they pay one tax rate, 21%, let's just say that, with no deductions. And so people will really find that attractive, but it's even better. You start to control immigration. You want to go to MIT, you got to get a uni. Why do you want that student to get a uni?
And he goes on for a few more moments, but you get the gist of it. That's what he's thinking. Anyway, Vivian, are you still there? Yeah.
Yes, I'm still here.
Yeah.
And I don't see how that just doesn't make us American. If we can just come and go as we please, they can come and go, live here, live there. I don't even know how the Americans would feel about it, but my personal feeling is no. I just don't agree with it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you.
Okay.
Good to hear from you. To Greg in Waterloo. Greg, you're on the air. What's your opinion of all of this?
So on the tariffs, you have to be really selective, like we were last time. But I don't think it's really going to have the effect that we're hoping, where those Congress people or senators go back to Trump and try to change his mind. But I think you have to do it just sort of as a show of force. But be careful, because we don't want to make it more expensive on us Canadians. And get rid of the inter-provincial tariffs that we have between the provinces, because I think we could just trade with each other while we're waiting, because Trump will only be there for 4 years. He might be only powerful for 2. This all might just be a 24-month problem with tariffs.
Okay.
So don't set us up permanently for anything. And then as for the union, there's some good things in it, but I'd be afraid that we'd lose, doctors, nurses, skilled trades, because if it's easy just to work down there, wouldn't you rather be in Nevada in the winter, building houses than, in Alberta? So
maybe.
I'd be afraid of losing really talented people if we just had an open border and you could work anywhere else.
All right. Very interesting. Thank you, Greg. In Waterloo, I'll have to stop here. But Stefan, you hang on the line. Bernie as well. Get to your call. Tyler out in Red Deer. You're all in the line, in the queue to have your say on Talkback here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Should Canada impose its own tariffs on American imports to Canada if Trump follows through with his tariff threat? What do you think of the idea of an economic union between Canada and the United States? 2 questions for you today on Talkback. Stefan in Cambridge, Ontario. Stefan, hi there. What's your opinion?
Well, Donald Trump is an aggressive negotiator, and he has a self-imposed mandate to put America first. As Mr. Poilievre said in his interview with Peterson, we need to negotiate with the Americans to show that we can be stronger, richer, and safer together, as opposed to trying to up the ante on any kind of tariffs. The United States thinks it's been ripped off by China and Mexico, and it has, because factories have left Canada and the U.S., which puts us both on the same even playing field. So if these countries...
So in light of that, then... Go
ahead.
I just wanted to know, in light of that, then, what do you think should happen?
I think we should work together. I think we should find some commonality. I don't think tariffs is the way to go. I think this is just Donald Trump's way of starting off the negotiations. And if we actually show him that we can actually work together, the whole thing started because he thought we had a porous border, and he thought that he was subsidizing Canada. The only reason we have a surplus is because of the oil and gas coming out of Alberta, which is why Danielle Smith is in Mar-a-Lago.
Yes, I thought she explained that pretty well. Pierre Poilievre has explained that as well. And so has Mr. Trudeau, for that matter. What do you think of the idea of an economic union between Canada and the United States?
I think that the decreasing tariffs, or making it easier for us to actually trade with the United States is actually a good idea. Eventually, I think that we're going to end up with a North American trading zone. You have a European trading zone and an Asian trading zone. So if that's the way we're heading, we may as well start working with the Americans at this point.
Common currency. You heard O'Leary promote there like a common passport, free, unencumbered travel between the two countries to work or study. What about that? You like that idea?
I can understand a common currency. His comment about commodities being traded in the U.S. dollar. Well, the commodities are traded in the U.S. dollar all over the planet, so you're not going to have a common currency all over the planet unless other things happen. But common currency between Canada and the U.S., I'm not crazy about. I don't think we should have a common passport. I think we should keep our distinct nationality.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting, Stefan.
Thank you.
Really like the comments. Bernie in Mississauga. Hi, Bernie. Not much time, Bernie. Let's get right to it here. What do you think?
Going today?
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to say, I think that oil and gas, water, minerals, everything should be on the table for Canada to retaliate against the United States if he goes through with his 25% tariff. I listened to Daniel Smith, and I listened to Kevin O'Leary and everything about their economic union. And all I can say is that the Republicans got the White House, they got the Senate, they got the Congress. All they got to do now is change the Conservative name in Canada to Republican, and they have Canada. So I don't trust them.
All right, Bernie. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all your calls in the first hour. Very busy, but another hour is ahead. Hour number 2 of Talkback is coming up. Stick with this topic. Retaliatory tariffs and this idea of an economic union. Gathering your ideas on this. Support, opposition. 1-833-668-2577. The latest breaking news is coming up next on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
1 week from today, Donald Trump will be sworn in as U.S. president. You know he's been threatening 25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States. If he does that, should Canada retaliate with tariffs of its own? Yes or no? Why not? What do you think of the idea of an economic union between Canada and the United States? Common currency, common passport, common tax rates, all of these things. We've heard from 2 Canadian leaders today. The Alberta Premier, Danielle Smith, who was just at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend, had a news conference. She was asked about cutting off energy exports to the United States. The Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly, suggested that we would turn off the taps. And Danielle Smith is totally opposed to that for various reasons, including what it could mean for Ontario and Quebec. This was Danielle Smith today.
Yesterday, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly talked about, she was asked specifically if in negotiations with Trump, Canada would consider an energy embargo on the United States. And I want to, as leverage, what do you think, what do you make of what she said?
Well, first of all, it's oil and gas is owned by the provinces, principally Alberta, and we won't stand for that. And you should never, ever threaten something you cannot do. And I would encourage the minister to look at a map of where Line 5 goes. Line 5 comes down through Michigan to get to Sarnia. And then that feeds the bulk of the supply needed for Ontario and connects with Line 9, which feeds the bulk of the product needed for Quebec. And so if you cut off that line, you are cutting off Ontario and Quebec. So I would encourage the ministers to either understand how our integrated pipeline system works and start looking at ways that we would be able to practically respond, because there's no point in making empty threats that cannot be executed on.
So on this idea, restricting energy export, hard no from Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who said it could cause a national unity crisis. Then there's the NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh. He was in Ottawa today. He was meeting with members of the press gallery. He was asked, because he wants retaliatory tariffs, starting with critical minerals, he said.
Would you rather see targeted tariffs or a more broad-based action like the Americans are putting on Canada?
I think we need to be very strategic about our response. So we need to look at a step-by-step response that meets the tariffs in kind and that escalates the pressure that we're putting on the United States. That's why I propose starting with one thing like critical minerals, and then we can expand on that and build on that. But we need to look at how we have a response plan that goes step by step, that increases the pressure on the United States to make it clear to Donald Trump, if he picks a fight with Canada, it's going to hurt the United States as well. And it's why, again, I want to point out that that while Donald Trump is threatening Canadians, Pierre Poilievre's plan is to do nothing, to sit back and literally do nothing, because he's been endorsed by Elon Musk. He doesn't want to upset that endorsement, so he's got no interest in defending Canadian jobs.
So he would go on to attack Pierre Poilievre, calling him a billionaire's bootlicker. Let's go to Tyler in Red Deer. Tyler, thanks for waiting. Appreciate you calling today. What's your opinion?
Hi, Rob. Thanks for taking my call. First-time caller. Just want to say I appreciate the moderating tone that you've given to 660 radio out here. I just want to first say that Donald Trump's not dumb, and people think that he might not understand tariffs and he just kind of spouts. And yeah, he's a bit like Bill Burr in that sense. He's that tough-talking New Yorker. He says things a little bit differently than Canadians tend to speak to each other, let's say. But, you know, in terms of what Jagmeet Singh's been saying, and Daniel Smith has been saying, I'm going to say, look, I'm in Alberta, so maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think Daniel Smith is setting the correct tone for our country.
Okay.
I think that Jagmeet Singh called him a bully. I mean, why is he using grade school terminology? Why are our politicians using grade school terminology against this bigger dog in a fight where we're the smaller dog?
Okay. Well, maybe the response is because of his disrespect for Canada, that Canada should become the 51st state. Maybe it can have a governor, you know. That's disrespectful as well, right? So
yeah, that's some bravado. And I mean, the way I respond to bravado is maybe to play a little bit of a bravado. I mean, having read maybe Donald Trump, he's got a book I read a while ago. It's just his game that he plays. Look, but
all right.
Bottom line is we got to respect the Americans. And, you know, in terms of like, if we become this passport idea, I mean, France has not become England and England has not become France with the EU arrangement. So Canada's going to stay Canada. United States can stay United States. Look, they want to patrol the north and make sure it's safe. And that's our sovereign territory. Maybe we should give them the ability to do that. You know, and I mean, I've got friends, let's say, that are baby boomers, like their parents are boomers. I'm a millennial. I'm a senior millennial myself. But baby boomer parents all over the place, they go to the South in the winter. Like, it would just make things easier. It's what we already do. It's just let's put something official to it.
Okay.
Let's get in a handshake with the Americans and move forward together in this new world.
You're open to the idea of an economic union. That's very interesting, Tyler. I thank you for your call. We're going to stop here, and then Renee and John and Bill get you all on the air in very short order. 1-833-668-2577, hour number 2 of Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Trump tariffs, retaliatory tariffs from Canada, entering an economic union with the United States. It's all up for discussion today on Talkback. Renee in Diamond Valley, Alberta. Renee, you're on the air. What's your opinion here, Renee?
Hey, Rob. First, I'd like to thank you for being there. After what the competition did in destroying our local talk radio programming, it is so great to have somebody who's reasonable and who listens, and as the other fellow said, had a great moderating voice. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Very kind. Thank you.
And then I want to move forward and say about what's going on between Trump and Canada. Canadians, especially Canadians down east, have only themselves to blame. They've been voting the same way for so long, they didn't see the idiot with beautiful socks destroying what was left of our relationship with America. And so now Trump, who asked him to do certain things which were well within his providence, increasing military spending, doing this, doing that, and Trudeau just laughed at him, stuck knives in him behind his back, and then he wonders why, when Trump has again gained power, which nobody expected, he wonders why Trump has said, okay, we're tired of defending Canada if Canada won't defend itself. We're tired of doing this for Canada because Canada takes it for granted. And all of a sudden, as often said, the chickens have come home to roost. And you get the government you vote for, and this is what the government they voted for.
So now that we are where we are, and we are facing this threat, and it's a serious threat, could do real damage to our economy. Should Canada respond with tariffs of its own? What would you say?
No, it's easily fixed. Do what he asked us
Easily fixed? Okay.
Pay for our military. Watch what we bring into this country that skips over to their country. And that's a good start. He would look on that very favorably. But everybody wants to pound their chest, especially Mr. Singh, who has just been a burr on our side forever. and he's standing there pounding his chest as if he had a say in the matter. He has no say. He is like he is like a fly in the wind.
Well, I mean, a lot of this is for domestic consumption, right? And the idea that there's going to be an election, whatever. So, but what do you think of this idea of an economic union with the United States?
I have to be honest and say I'm against it.
You're against that.
I'm not saying NAFTA is perfect, and I'm not saying that it can't be. I know they call it something different now, and I'm not saying it can't be renegotiated to something better. But I'm not in for an economic union. I like my sovereignty. I had been, except for the last 9 years, a very proud Canadian. But a message to Miss Jolie in Ottawa, stay away from our oil. If she wants to create a constitutional crisis and separation, we'll make Quebec look like beginners because we don't want any part of that. They've been plundering Alberta for years. And there's a growing movement of separatism out here.
Yeah, there is. That's unfortunate. Thank you, Renee. Good to hear from you.
And thank you, Rob.
Yeah, I got to move along. Very busy on the phones today. Let's go to John on the line. Hi, John in Calgary. Hi, John.
Hey, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. John, what's your opinion on the topics of the day?
First of all, what about the NAFTA agreement?
What about it?
Well, I don't agree with retaliation because to me it's for the Americans they're gonna pay more anyway, but it's still cheaper for them.
But it's what it could do to our economy, the damage that it could do to our economy. You know, it could do a lot of harm to our economy.
You mean in terms of decline in production?
Yeah, if these tariffs become a reality, they could do serious harm to the economy. Factories could start closing. People could start losing their jobs and their homes, and the economy could go into a recession with these tariffs.
I don't know why, but I have a feeling Trump wouldn't do it. It's just like a threat, but if he does follow through, I don't think we should retaliate.
Okay. What do you think of the idea of having an economic union with the United States?
Right? Like a free trade, right?
Well, it would be more than that. It would be, we use the same currency. Both countries use the Canadian dollar. You would be able to have, the way it's being pitched is basically passport-free travel between Canada and the United States. If you wanted to work in the United States, it would be a lot easier. If you wanted to study in the United States, it would be a lot easier, and vice versa. What do you think of that idea?
Yeah, just like the EU, right?
Like the EU, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
You think it's a good idea? Okay, interesting. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, thank you for your call, John. Let's get to George, is also in Calgary. Hi, George.
Hey, thanks, Rob, for taking my call.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Just quickly, I think a lot of your listeners are missing something with Trump. Just basically, before, when he was just in real estate, with the he's basically a bully. He pushes things. What he basically says he will be doing, so that's a concern. Now let's just jump. So things are going to happen. So how do we deal with that? So he puts a tariff on, which we realize is going to cost more for the American people.
Yes.
Instead of doing a tariff, still buy the orange juice from Florida for whatever price is. Keep it cheaper for Canadians. Where we could get our stuff cheap, this is fine. But and I'm not a fan of Singh or anything else, but what he mentioned was you start off with certain things, and what you start off with, let's say with the minerals and stuff, what you do is not a tariff as such, but you do what Canada can do is an export tax, and an export tax allows us to tax our goods going out to them. So it now they are paying more for whatever goods that were going there. So what Ford had said, instead of cutting off electricity, because I don't agree with that, because you don't want to harm people, right? In the sense of living in their houses or whatever, right? What you want to do, it's going to cost you more, and then so it becomes a financial situation for the U.S. again, because it's an export tax, not a tariff for us, where we're paying for that difference, right? And last piece on the sovereignty, I'm not a big fan of that. Somebody else had said it's a slippery slope, and especially with
slippery slope. Okay.
Yeah, 10 times the size, and that the economic weight they have on there. If we're part of that, it's going to be just like Germany sort of has sway over the Europe in a sense, right? It's the same sort of idea.
Right. Okay. So, all right. Thank you. Good to hear from you. Thank you, George, for your call. Okay, we have some free lines available. It's been very busy on Talkback so far, but if you call now, the wait won't be too long at all. We've cleared some of the phone lines. 1-833-668-2577. Have your opinion. The inauguration of Donald Trump just 1 week from today. The world could change. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, the idea of an economic union. It's made for interesting discussion today. Toby is on the line from Calgary. Hi, Toby. What's your opinion, Toby?
Hi, how are you, Rob? First time
I'm
caller.
good, Toby. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Hey, just a couple of thoughts. So regarding the union, I've done a fair bit of travel to Europe, and I do quite like that freedom that you have intercontinentally. I think there's a lot of value, especially with what we face in today's world. I think there is some benefit to that. I know lots of people look at the Americans, and that's sort of the motivator for being against it. But if you peel all of that emotion back, there's a lot of sense, in my opinion.
Okay.
The other thing I just wanted to highlight was the whole Trump thing with, him threatening tariffs, and not heard anybody talk about is what if all this NATO stuff he talks about, and we haven't paid our fair share for so long, what if he were to call that loan in? And he looks at that and says, Canada, you owe me this much money. You've got basically 180 days, you pay it or else. We wouldn't have a leg to stand on. But anyway, those are my thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, it'd probably be a pretty big bill. I wouldn't want to pay it. Thank you, Toby. Jeff, also calling from Alberta. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Rob. Yeah, just a couple points here.
Sure.
First of all, Donald Trump had threatened the tariffs, to my understanding, on two conditions initially. One was with regard to our immigration issue, that people were flowing, I think, over the border to him. And the other thing was the fentanyl issue and drugs. And I think it was one of the premiers out of the North that actually suggested that, why isn't an American administration pointing out the obvious that Canada hasn't done enough to control some of those issues? And I think those are valid points. So they seem to be the 2 points he started off with regard to the whole tariffs and why he would impose them. Second of all, with regard to the economic, bringing us together in an economic union, unfortunately, we're like a coyote chasing at an elephant. We're going to get kicked no matter what. And I think we need to really be careful how we step that out. And I think there's some positives. But if you look at the European Union and some of the mass immigration issues they've had to deal with because they were in the Union, and because of that, they had to comply with what the European Union dictated to them. Many of those countries wound up being, besieged by immigration issues. So again, with any sort of economic union that we would have, we still want to be in control of our borders and who comes in and all that. And just the third point, if a tariff is established and we counter with it, you made the point a couple minutes ago about the number of factories that could be infected by, shutting down our factories here in Canada. But look at people who are struggling to buy products now. I just came out of Costco here a couple hours ago, and fruit and vegetables, like, we're not growing them 12 months of the year in Canada, unfortunately, in abundance. And where do we get our stuff from? Unless we can bring things in from Costa Rica without bypassing the United States. So there's a lot of things to think about, right?
Yeah. Got to wrap it up. We're right up against it. The news is next on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
So we've been talking about the threat of Trump tariffs, with Donald Trump being sworn in as U.S. president again 1 week from today. He's threatened to impose 25% tariffs on all of our exports to the United States. If he does that, should Canada impose its own tariffs on imports to Canada? And would you support or oppose entering an economic union with the United States? What do you think of this idea of forming an economic union with the United States? We're throwing it out there today because it's been thrown out there. And because someone who apparently has access to Donald Trump thinks this is a good idea. Kevin O'Leary making this pitch. He's the one in the picture on social media with Donald Trump and Danielle Smith at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend. So I don't know if he actually pitched this to Donald Trump, but this is what he's pitching when he goes on television, an economic union. So what does he mean by that? Well, let's listen to him. This is what he outlined in a video on one of his social media accounts. David has the tape. Let's roll on that, Dave.
A common currency. All of the commodities, and Canada's so rich in them, whether it's precious metals, or water, or oil, or whatever, gas, are denominated in American dollars. Every Canadian has an American dollar account. So why not just say, we'll have a common currency. Maybe you give the Bank of Canada 2 seats on the Fed, details to be worked out. And all of a sudden, you're trading goods and services in one currency. Check that box. Number 2, eradicate all tariffs, not just north and south, east and west. You take Vermont, for example. There's a barrier between Vermont farmers selling dairy into Quebec, just north of them. And Quebec is subsidized by Alberta with a milk board that pours milk away after Alberta gives them $5 billion to subsidize them. That's just sheer stupidity. Wine in California can't be shipped to British Columbia. British Columbia wine can't be shipped to Ontario. You get to see what I'm talking about. Eradicate all of that, and the productivity goes through the moon. Here's how you control immigration. Let's nickname it the Uni. This is a passport that's issued to any American citizen in good standing with the American government and has a passport, or any Canadian citizen in good standing with the Canadian government. Each government gets a say on whether a unifying passport is issued to that individual. That individual can then travel and live anywhere they want, any province, any state, and they pay one tax rate, 21%. Let's just say that, with no deductions. And so people will really find that attractive, but it's even better. You start to control immigration. You want to go to MIT? You got to get a uni. Why do you want that student to get a uni? Because half the students at MIT going into engineering, very valuable students, we kick them out of the country when they graduate. What are we, idiots? We should bring their whole families over if the background check works and keep them here working for our economy. On and on and on and on.
Yeah.
All these ideas do not have you giving up your citizenship.
So it's Kevin O'Leary. That's his idea. Economic union with the United States. Common currency, meaning we adopt the U.S. dollar. We share his vision for this common passport, I guess. We all keep our own citizenship. So we have our own passports. So we get some kind of new special passport. Allows us free travel, work, and study in both countries. He calls it a uni. No matter where you live, well, you can live anywhere, but everyone pays the same tax rate. He uses this example, 21%, and no tariffs. Just get rid of all the tariffs on all imports, all exports. Get rid of those interprovincial trade barriers as well. People have been complaining about those for a long time anyway. So that's basically it. And you're still a Canadian, and an American is still an American. What do you think about that idea? And if Trump follows through with the tariffs, should we have tariffs of our own? John in Calgary, you're on the air, John. Hi there.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for taking my call. I listen to you literally every day.
You're welcome. What's your opinion?
I don't think we should retaliate with the tariffs. Now that these fires are going on, and we're showing them exactly what we are about, it's they scratch our back, we scratch theirs. We're going over there to help them. I don't imagine we were asked. It was probably a volunteer kind of thing. And we're helping the American people. Screw the politician part of it. It's Canadian people helping American people. So that shows something of how we are. So I don't believe retaliating with a country that big and powerful with tariffs is a great idea. Because and that union thing, you can throw that union out the window. You know.
Okay. You don't like the idea of an economic union? You don't like that idea?
No. Like, I don't believe that we will lose all of our workers. Who doesn't want to go to Florida? And work. We shouldn't be able to go back and forth on a whim. Like, then, yeah, we would feel more American. And who doesn't want to be Canadian? Really. So, as far as the tariffs go, I don't think we should retaliate. Primarily because we are showing them right now by going over there and help them with our technology, our planes, that we're here to help.
Yeah.
You know, we have their back. They should have ours. We can just hide it for 4 years.
Okay.
You know, when Trump's out, someone else is it.
Well, and as somebody else mentioned, it might not even be 4 years. Maybe it's only 2 years because they'll have the midterms. And right now the Republicans control everything, but they could lose some of this control in the midterms, right? Maybe it's only a 2-year thing. So,
the tit for tat thing,
interesting. Thank you.
Throw that out the window.
Throw it out the window. Okay. Thank you, John, for calling today. Thank you for listening as well. Appreciate it. All the people who are listening, new listeners. Love to hear from new listeners, new callers. If you're a first-time caller, just mention that to the call screener as always, and we love to hear from you. 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. Join the discussion on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
And on this issue, retaliatory tariffs. Hot topic in the country today. Premier Danielle Smith saying, no, you should not have retaliatory tariffs, even though tariffs are probably on the way, sooner rather than later. Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader, saying, yes, we need to retaliate. We need to stand up to the bully Donald Trump. I mean, let's think about what could be coming for Canada in the next week and a little bit. Donald Trump is to be sworn in 1 week from today as U.S. president, starts second term. And this is a scenario that is out there. He will declare an economic emergency because of international trade. And that will give him the authority to impose tariffs on Canada and across the board 25% tariff, and Mexico and a whole bunch of other countries. And all of these appeals from Ontario Premier Doug Ford or Alberta Premier Danielle Smith or Prime Minister Trudeau about the importance of their relationship and how there should be closer ties and how these tariffs will just mean higher prices for Americans, all that falls on deaf ears. Trump goes ahead, does the tariffs. What should Canada do that? Impose its own tariffs on American goods imported into our country? What do you think? I mean, it could all start happening in a week or so, and despite a free trade deal signed with the United States, signed by Trump, the Canadian economy, it could be sideswiped by these new tariffs on just about everything we send to the U.S., and we send a lot of stuff to the U.S., $600 billion worth of stuff every year. But this is a scenario being contemplated according to news reports. Trump's going to declare that the United States faces a national economic emergency under something called the International Economic Emergency Powers Act of the United States, meaning he could unilaterally manage imports into the United States because the United States is facing a national emergency. And he does that, and we're in their sights, and Canada would be hit with tariffs, and Mexico will be hit with tariffs, and who knows, maybe Panama gets hit with tariffs because Trump has his eyes on the Panama Canal, and maybe Denmark gets hit with tariffs because Trump has his eyes on Greenland. And those tariffs, they become a reality, do serious harm to the Canadian economy. Recession looms. How should Canada react to such aggressive action with tariffs of its own? We have these news reports today. Trudeau Liberals drawing up a list of potential American imports for counter tariffs, orange juice, bathtubs, sinks, things like that. Household ceramics, steel imports from the United States, maybe more to be added to the list. We import a lot of vehicles from the United States. 40% of the fruit we import comes from the United States. We import a lot of petrochemicals from the United States, import a lot of machinery, a lot of farm equipment, a lot of electronics. Should Canada impose tariffs on all this stuff? What would you say? 1-833-668-2577. Ahmed in Calgary. Thanks for waiting, Ahmed. You're on the air. What's your opinion here?
My opinion is, unfortunately, the people who lose out on this the most is the consumers. But, if Trump does start to impose his, tariffs, I think we should do the same. But I also think we should also start diversifying our exports and not rely so much on the states. And regarding that whole unification economic thing, I think that's step one to becoming an American state.
You do? Okay. This idea of common currency, common passport, you can live and study in each other's country. He says you don't have to give up, you won't be giving up your citizenship.
Yet.
Yet.
I mean, what's the difference between, if that does happen, how do we differentiate the Canadian from the American? The currency is the same, all these borders get wiped. I don't think that's a very good idea.
Okay. Well, he compares it to the European Union. I mean, there are 27 countries as part of the European Union. Not all of them use the euro, but I think it's something like 19 of them use the same currency. You can travel through all of those countries without needing a visa or to show a passport. You can live in any one of those countries. They do this in other parts of the world, Europe, right?
Sure, they do that. I get that. But the States is a different beast. The States is a different monster. And I truly believe that if they were able to do that, then they'll keep pushing and pushing and pushing until Trump gets what he wants, because that's what he does.
All right. Very interesting. Thank you, Ahmed, for your opinion, sir. Really appreciate it. Prakesh in Calgary. Thanks for calling. Prakesh, you're on the air. What's your opinion?
Hi, Rob. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, tariff has been a new phenomenon in this world. And it's a learning process for both parties, even for Canada, because now what has happened in the previous times, tariffs were imposed one way. Now we get to feel them when the tariff is imposed on other nations. So it's a learning process. We will learn how to go through that, and we manage the outcome of that. So at least in a bigger picture, we are getting the focus here, what it feels like when the tariff is implemented. Because I am sure Canada has been part of countries that had imposed tariffs around the world. So now they get a feel of it. Maybe a better outcome will come out of this exercise in due course.
Yeah, the question is, should we retaliate?
No, it's a learning process. What we can learn from that. Do we really retaliate? What was in the history? We look at the history when we go through the biography, see what other countries has done. It had sometimes they were not in a position to retaliate. Sometimes they were, but in a situation where people are limited to retaliate, they will come up and feel what is being felt by other people. Maybe they will look for other ways of getting things done rather than going through tariffs and sanctions.
Okay. What do you think of the idea of an economic union?
That's a good learning process. We can see the European Union that was formed in the continent of Europe. Now you can look at how the outcome is, how it's going. We also can look at the African Union that's coming through. It purports to be a good solution, but there are factors that make and break it. Like it's all rosy in the textbooks, but in the practical terms, there's internal struggles, that extra elements will try to make it not work. So in our context, in Canada's context, if we trade and our only trading partner is one country, then it works. But if we're trading with countries outside the continent, then they will pull their strings too. So it's a complex situation. Just implementing it for the sake of implementing it might not be the desired outcome.
I appreciate your call today. Thank you so much. We're in the home stretch now. Talkback here on a Monday. Been very busy. Heavy-duty topics today. International affairs. So we removed from the Trump swearing in. I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Right back to the phones on tariffs and economic unions. Joe in Calgary. Thanks for calling. Joe, you're on the air. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah. Trump is a bully. And I think you have to be strong with the guy. You got to hit him back, and you got to hit him back hard. Like Premier of Ontario said he'll cut off the power. Maybe that's a little bit extreme, but maybe you have rolling brownouts or something like that. Like, you got to do something. You just can't sit back and take it.
Can't roll over and just take it.
Yeah, well, I mean,
play
last
nice.
time he was in power, he renegotiated the NAFTA, whatever it was called, right? Well, isn't that still in effect? So the guy just
but under the scenario, remember I outlined this scenario. He's going to declare an economic emergency.
Yeah,
so I guess
I know
that would probably supersede the whatever agreement we have.
Sure, but he's going to do that every time. He's going to do that when he gets into power. He's going to do that the year after if he doesn't like what's going on. No, you got to hit him. You got to hit him hard. And it's not just Canada; it's Mexico, and it's the rest of the world. Isolate the guy.
Isolate the guy. Okay.
Yeah, isolate him.
All right.
I mean, I understand. I understand it's the biggest economy in the world, or whatever the term is. But isolate him and see what he does.
Okay. All right. Thank you. What do you think of this idea for economic union? What do you think about that idea?
Well, that's exactly what that NAFTA thing was supposed to be, wasn't it?
Well, this would go further than that. We're talking about we adopt the U.S. dollar. We have a common passport that allows us free travel to work and travel, study in both countries. Everyone pays the same tax rate. This kind of stuff is how it's being pitched.
Yeah, that's got some merit, and it may work to an extent. But I like right now the way the Canadian dollar is against the American dollar. I'd cringe a little bit if that happened right away, and we had to lose, almost 50% of our assets or whatever. Like that kind of scares me. I don't know what the implications of something like that. I mean, it's attractive in some ways. I see how it works in Europe. But the Americans would be, they'd be a little bit leery about that as well because they are the strongest economy, right? So, like Germany has to pay out every time, Spain or Greece goes.
Well, I guess, and we'll have to close on this. Thank you so much. Are we just talking economics? Because there's a lot of other stuff that comes with the European Union. The EU has its own parliament. The EU has its own courts. And some people, like the Brexit people in the UK, for example, never liked the idea of giving up that kind of power to another level of government in some far-off country. That's one of the things to consider as well. Thank you for all of your calls today.